Jake Morrison pushed through the twisted metal doorway of the old space station. His breath made small clouds in the cold air as he looked around the dark hallway. The emergency lights blinked red and orange, making strange shadows dance on the walls. His boots crunched on broken glass and debris scattered across the floor. The Velthari had built this place big. The ceiling stretched high above his head, and the hallways were wide enough for 3 humans to walk side by side. Everything was made for beings much larger than Jake. He felt small in this empty place that once buzzed with alien life. Jake checked his scanner again. The device beeped softly as it found more valuable equipment deeper in the station. His company had sent him here to make a list of everything worth taking. The Velthari Empire had left this research station 6 months ago without warning. Nobody knew why they abandoned it so quickly, but Jake did not care about the reasons. He just wanted to find the good stuff and get paid. He moved carefully through the station, marking his path with small beacons. Getting lost in this maze would be bad. His suit had enough air for 8 hours, but that would not help if he could not find his way back to his ship. The first few levels had the expected things: computers, lab equipment, and strange alien tools he could not identify. Everything was worth money to the right buyers. Jake took pictures and made notes on his tablet. The work was boring but necessary. As he went deeper into the station, the air got warmer. His scanner showed that life support still worked on the lower levels. Jake found an airlock and checked the atmosphere on the other side. It was safe for humans. He opened his helmet and breathed the stale air. The lower levels were different. They smelled bad, like old garbage and things that had been wet too long. The walls here were not clean metal like the upper floors. Instead, they were stained and dirty. This must be where the Velthari kept their waste processing and maintenance systems. Jake almost missed her. He was checking a room full of broken machinery when he heard a small sound. It was barely a whisper, but it did not belong in an empty station. Jake stopped moving and listened. There it was again, coming from behind a large processing unit. Jake moved slowly toward the sound. He did not want to scare whatever was back there. As he got closer, he could hear soft breathing and what sounded like quiet crying. Behind the machine, curled up in a space barely big enough for a human child, was a Velthari. Jake had seen pictures of the reptilian aliens before, but never one in person. This one was small and thin, much smaller than the images he had seen. Her scales were a dull gray-green color, and they looked sick. She wore rags that might have once been clothing. Her large eyes stared at him with pure terror. She tried to make herself even smaller when she saw him. Her voice was high and scared as she spoke in her own language. Jake did not understand the words, but he knew fear when he heard it. "Hey, it's okay," Jake said softly. He held up his hands to show he was not holding any weapons. "I'm not going to hurt you." The Velthari female shook her head violently. She spoke again, this time in broken galactic standard that Jake could understand. "No, no, no. Go away. Do not look at me. I am dirty. I am bad. Shendel. Filthy Shendel." She covered her face with her hands and made herself as small as possible. Jake could see that her hands were cut and infected. She had been living in this terrible place for months. Jake's heart broke a little. He had heard about the Velthari caste system before, but seeing it up close was different. This young female believed she was worthless because her society had told her so since birth. "My name is Jake," he said, keeping his voice gentle. "What's your name?" She peeked at him through her fingers. "Zara," she whispered, "but name's not for Shendel. Shendel have no names, only numbers." "Well, I think Zara is a beautiful name," Jake said. He slowly reached into his pack and pulled out a food bar. "Are you hungry?" Zara stared at the food like it was made of gold. Jake could see her thin body shaking with hunger, but she shook her head. Cannot eat clean food. Shendel eat waste only. Cannot touch clean things. Make them dirty. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. Not at Zara, but at the system that had done this to her. He tore open the food bar and took a bite to show it was safe. "This is just food," he said. "Nothing special about it, and you won't make it dirty by eating it." Zara watched him chew and swallow. Her stomach made loud, hungry sounds, but she still would not reach for the food. "Why you here?" she asked. "Empire left. Savage Shendel, not worth transport cost. Better to leave behind." The casual way she said it made Jake's anger burn hotter. They had abandoned her like garbage because moving her would cost too much money. "I'm here to look at the equipment," Jake said. "But that's not important now. You need food and medical help." "No help for Shendel," Zara said firmly. "Shendel deserve nothing. Born wrong, genes bad. Only good for dangerous work and death." Jake had to work hard to keep his voice calm. "That's not true. You're a person, Zara. You deserve help just like anyone else." Zara looked at him like he was crazy. "Human not understand. Shendel pollute everything. Touch food. Food becomes poison. Touch clean place becomes dirty. Better if Shendel never born." She started rocking back and forth, repeating the same words over and over like a prayer. Filthy, useless, shameful, born wrong. Deserve nothing. Filthy, useless, shameful. Jake felt sick listening to it. Someone had spent years teaching this young female to hate herself. They had trained her to believe she was less than nothing. "Stop," Jake said firmly. "Stop saying those things about yourself." Zara looked up at him in shock. Nobody had ever told her to stop saying the truth about what she was. Jake put the food bar on the ground between them and backed away a few steps. "I'm going to leave this here. You can eat it if you want. I won't watch if that makes you feel better." He turned around and pretended to examine some machinery while listening to Zara behind him. After several minutes, he heard the wrapper crinkle. She was eating the food bar so fast she was almost choking on it. When Jake turned back around, Zara was licking the wrapper to get every last crumb. She looked guilty and scared, like she expected to be punished for eating. "Feel better?" Jake asked. Zara nodded but would not look at him. Why human give food to Shendel? Jake thought about how to answer. The real answer was complicated. The simple answer was that she was hungry and he had food. "Because you needed it," he said. Zara stared at him like he had said something impossible. In her world, need was not enough. Only worth mattered, and she had been taught she had no worth. Jake looked around the terrible place where Zara had been living. There was no clean water, no proper food, no medical supplies. She had been surviving on contaminated water and scraps for 6 months. The fact that she was still alive showed how strong she really was. "Zara," Jake said carefully, "would you like to come with me? I have a ship with clean water, food, and a medical kit." The terror came back to her eyes immediately. "No, cannot leave. Must stay in proper place. Shendel not allowed on clean ships. Would pollute everything. Kill all aboard." "That's not true," Jake said. "You won't hurt anyone." But Zara was already shaking her head and backing away from him. Human not understand. Shendel bring death, bring disease, bring shame. Better to leave Zara here. Better to forget. Jake realized he could not force her to come with him. She was too scared and too convinced of her own worthlessness. But he also could not leave her here to die alone in this awful place. "Okay," he said. "I won't make you come with me. But I'm going to bring you some supplies. Clean water, food, medical kit. Will you let me do that?" Zora looked confused. "Why? Waste supplies on Shendel?" Jake met her eyes directly. "Because you're alive, Zara, and that makes you valuable to me." She stared at him in complete shock, as if he had just said something that broke every rule of the universe she knew. Jake returned to the station the next day with his arms full of supplies. He had spent the night thinking about Zara, unable to get the image of her terrified face out of his mind. His ship had everything she needed to get healthy again, but first he had to convince her to accept help. He found her in the same spot behind the broken machinery. She had not moved far from where he left her. When she saw him coming with bags of supplies, she tried to hide. "It's just me, Zara," Jake said softly. "I brought the things I promised." He set down containers of clean water, food packets, and a basic medical kit. Zara stared at the supplies like they were dangerous weapons. "Cannot take," she whispered. "Clean things not for Shendal. Will make everything bad." Jake opened one of the water containers and took a drink. "See? Just water, nothing special about it." Zara watched him drink, her eyes following every drop. Jake could tell she was very thirsty, but she would not reach for the water. "What if I leave it here and go away?" Jake asked. "Then you can decide what to do with it." Zara shook her head quickly. "Shendal not allowed to choose. Only take orders. Only do what told." "Who's here to give you orders?" Jake asked, looking around the empty station. Zara looked confused by the question. She had never thought about it that way. For her whole life, someone had always been there to tell her what she could and could not do. Jake sat down on the floor several feet away from her. "I'm not going to tell you what to do, Zara. You can choose for yourself." The word choose seemed to scare her more than anything else Jake had said. She started rocking back and forth again, repeating her mantra about being filthy and worthless. Jake waited patiently. After an hour, Zara's thirst finally won over her conditioning. She grabbed one of the water containers and drank it so fast that she made herself sick. "Slow down," Jake said gently. "The water isn't going anywhere." Zara stopped drinking and looked at him with panic. "Did wrong thing? Punishment now?" "No punishment," Jake said. "You just drank too fast. Your stomach needs time to get used to clean water again." Over the next few days, Jake visited Zara regularly. Each time, he brought more supplies and stayed a little longer. Slowly, she began to trust that he would not hurt her or take the supplies away, but accepting help was harder for Zara than Jake had expected. She would only eat the food after Jake had touched it first, believing that his contact somehow made it safe for her to consume. She refused to use the medical supplies on her infected cuts, saying that Shendal were supposed to suffer pain. "Teaches Shendal their place," she explained to Jake one day. "No pain means forgetting what we are." Jake felt sick every time she said things like that. Someone had spent years training her to accept pain and suffering as normal. They had convinced her that feeling good was wrong. "Pain doesn't teach anything useful," Jake said. "It just hurts." Zara looked at him like he was speaking a foreign language. In her world, pain had always had meaning and purpose. On the 5th day, Jake made a decision. He could not leave Zara on this station to die slowly. The Velthari were not coming back for her, and she would not survive much longer on her own. "Zara," he said carefully, "I want you to come with me to my ship." The terror returned to her eyes immediately. "No, cannot leave station. This is proper place for Shendal. Waste processing level, with other waste." "You're not waste," Jake said firmly. "You're a person." "Human not understand Velthari ways," Zara said, shaking her head. "Shendal are waste. Born from waste, return to waste. This is natural order." Jake realized that arguing with her beliefs directly would not work. She had been taught these ideas since birth, and they were deeper than logic or reason. "What if I'm wrong about you being waste?" Jake asked. "What if your people made a mistake?" Zara looked shocked by the suggestion. "Empire never wrong. Leaders know all things. If say Shendal are waste, then is true. But leaders are people too," Jake said. "People make mistakes sometimes." Zara had never considered this possibility. In her world, the upper castes were perfect beings who could not be wrong about anything. Jake tried a different approach. What if we just go to my ship for one day? You can see that nothing bad happens. If you want to come back here, I'll bring you back. Zara thought about this for a long time. The idea of leaving her place scared her, but Jake had been kind to her. Maybe she could trust him for one day. If Zara makes ship dirty, will human bring back quickly? She asked. You won't make anything dirty, Jake said. But yes, if you want to come back, I'll bring you back. It took 2 more hours of gentle convincing before Zara agreed to leave the station. She insisted on walking behind Jake, saying that Shendal must never walk beside higher castes. Jake wanted to argue, but he knew pushing too hard would scare her away. Jake's ship, the Second Chance, was small but clean and comfortable. When Zara saw it, she stopped at the entrance and refused to go inside. Too clean, she whispered. Shendal will pollute everything. Ship will become cursed. The ship has been to dozens of planets, Jake said. It's already been exposed to all kinds of different things. You won't hurt it. Jake went inside first and showed Zara that nothing bad happened when he touched things. Slowly, carefully, she followed him inside. The moment Zara stepped into the ship, she began a strange ritual. She touched her forehead to the floor and spoke in her own language. Jake realized she was asking the ship's forgiveness for polluting it with her presence. You don't need to do that, Jake said gently. Must show respect, Zara said. Must apologize for bringing shame. Jake decided not to argue about it right now. Getting her onto the ship was a big step. He could work on the rest later. Jake showed Zara to the small guest cabin. It had a bed, a small table, and its own bathroom. Zara stared at everything in amazement. For Zara? She asked in disbelief. Yes, Jake said. This is your room while you're here. Zara shook her head quickly. Shendal not have rooms, sleep on floor only. In waste places only. She walked to the corner of the room and curled up on the floor, making herself as small as possible. Jake realized that she was trying to take up as little space as possible, believing that she did not deserve even the corner. The bed is more comfortable than the floor, Jake said. Comfort not for Shendal, Zara replied. Comfort makes Shendal forget their place. Pain and hardship keep Shendal proper. Jake left her alone to rest, but he watched through the door camera. Zara did not sleep. Instead, she spent hours cleaning the corner where she lay, even though it was already spotless. She used her own saliva and torn pieces of her clothing to scrub the floor and walls. When Jake brought her food, she refused to eat at the table. She took the plate and sat on the floor in the corner, eating with her hands instead of the utensils Jake provided. Shendal not use tools, she explained. Tools for real people only. That night, Jake contacted his friend Alex Rivera, who captained a transport ship between human colonies. Alex had connections with doctors and social workers who dealt with trauma cases. You found what? Alex asked over the communication link. A Velthari female. She was abandoned on a derelict station. Alex, you should see what they've done to her. She thinks she's worthless. The Velthari caste system is pretty harsh, Alex said. But I've never heard of them just abandoning people. She's from the lowest caste, the Shendal. They told her she wasn't worth the cost to transport. Alex was quiet for a moment. Jake, this could be complicated. If the Velthari find out you have one of their people, they might demand her back. They abandoned her, Jake said angrily. They left her to die. I know, but legally, she's still their citizen. You could get in trouble for this. Jake looked toward Zara's room, where she was still awake, still cleaning surfaces that did not need cleaning. I can't just abandon her too, Jake said. She needs help. Okay, Alex said. I know someone who might be able to help. Dr. Lisa Chun on New Portland Colony. She specializes in xenobiology and trauma therapy. But Jake, you need to be careful. This is bigger than just helping one person. After ending the call, Jake went to check on Zara again. She had not moved from her corner, but she was no longer cleaning. Instead, she was staring at her reflection in the polished metal wall. "Human-made mistake," she said quietly when she saw Jake. "What mistake?" Jake asked. "Bringing Shendal to clean place. Now ship is polluted. Will bring bad luck. Other humans will be angry at Jake." Jake sat down on the floor near her, but not close enough to make her uncomfortable. "Zara," he said, "you haven't polluted anything. You haven't brought bad luck. You're just a person who needed help." Zara looked at him with confusion and something that might have been hope. "If Zara is a person," she said slowly, "why Zara feel so empty inside? Why everything hurt all the time?" Jake felt his heart break a little more. "Because people hurt you, Zara, but that doesn't mean you're not a person. It means they were wrong to hurt you." Zara thought about this for a long time. The idea that her pain came from others being wrong, rather than from her own worthlessness, was completely new to her. "Hard to believe," she whispered. "I know," Jake said. "But maybe we can figure it out together." For the first time since he found her, Zara looked directly at Jake without fear in her eyes. It was just for a moment, but it was a start. The second chance docked at New Portland Colony 3 days later. Jake had contacted Dr. Lisa Chun ahead of time, and she was waiting at the docking bay with Maya Rodriguez, a social worker who specialized in helping trauma survivors. Zara had barely spoken during the journey. She spent most of her time in the corner of her room, performing the same cleaning rituals over and over. When Jake brought her food, she would only eat it after apologizing to him for taking resources away from more important people. "Zara," Jake said as the ship powered down, "we're at the colony now. Dr. Chun is here to help you." Zara looked terrified. "More humans see Shendal. Shame will spread. Colony will become cursed." "That's not going to happen," Jake said patiently. He had learned not to argue directly with her beliefs, but to offer different possibilities. Dr. Chun has helped many people. She knows what she's doing. When Dr. Chun and Maya came aboard the ship, Zara immediately pressed herself against the wall and covered her face. She began speaking rapidly in her own language, words that sounded like apologies or prayers. Dr. Chun was a small woman with kind eyes and graying hair. She had worked with alien trauma cases before, but Jake could see the shock on her face when she saw Zara's condition. "Hello, Zara," Dr. Chun said in perfect Velthari. "My name is Lisa. I'm here to help you feel better." Zara peeked through her fingers at Dr. Chun. "Human speaks proper language? I learned it so I could help people like you," Dr. Chun said gently. "No people like Shendal," Zara whispered. "Shendal is lowest. Nothing lower exists." Dr. Chun exchanged a look with Jake. She had read about the Velthari caste system, but seeing its effects up close was different from reading reports. Maya stepped forward. "Zara, we have a place prepared for you at our medical center. It's quiet and safe. Would you like to see it?" "Medical center not for Shendal," Zara said, shaking her head. "Medical care for real people only. Shendal heal on own or die proper death. Everyone deserves medical care," Maya said firmly, "including you." Zara looked confused by this statement. In her world, medical care was earned through worth, and she had been taught she had no worth. It took an hour of gentle persuasion before Zara agreed to leave the ship. She insisted on walking behind everyone else, and she kept apologizing to people they passed in the corridor for forcing them to see something as shameful as a Shendal. The medical center had prepared a private room for Zara, but when she saw it, she refused to enter. "Too good," she said, backing away. "Shendal not allowed in clean places. Will make sick people more sick," Dr. Chun had expected this reaction. What if we put some blankets on the floor? Would that be more comfortable? For you? Zara nodded hesitantly. She would only enter the room after Dr. Chen moved the bed out and placed thick blankets in the corner. Even then, Zara spent several minutes performing purification rituals before she would sit down. Over the next few days, Dr. Chun worked slowly with Zara. She started with basic medical care, treating the infections on Zara's hands and the malnutrition that had weakened her body. But the psychological healing was much harder. Zara fought against every kindness. When nurses brought her clean clothes, she refused to wear them. When they offered her warm food, she would only eat the cold leftovers. She seemed to believe that accepting anything good would somehow make her forget her place. Jake visited every day. He was the only person Zara seemed to trust, even a little bit. But even with Jake, she was constantly worried about being too much trouble. Jake spent too much time with Shendal, she said one afternoon. Other humans need Jake more. Important work waiting. Zara is waste of time. You're not a waste of time, Jake said. Helping you is important work. Zara looked at him with confusion. How helping worthless thing be important? Jake struggled to find words she could understand. Because you're not worthless, Zara. You matter. If Zara matters, she said slowly, why Zara feel so small inside? Why everything scary? Why Zara? Not know how to be person? Jake felt his heart break again. She was starting to question what she had been taught, but the doubt was painful for her. On the 5th day at the medical center, everything changed. Maya came to Jake's temporary quarters with bad news. The Velthari Empire has contacted the colonial government, Maya said. They're demanding Zara's return. Jake felt cold anger rise in his chest. They abandoned her. They said she wasn't worth transporting. They're claiming she's stolen property now, Maya said. They say you took her without permission. Property? Jake could barely control his voice. She's a person, not property. I know that. And you know that, Maya said. But legally, it's complicated. The colony government is trying to maintain good relations with the Velthari Empire. They're considering sending her back. Jake stood up quickly. They can't do that. It would be murder. The administrator wants to meet with you tomorrow, Maya said. Ben Taylor. He's trying to find a kind solution that won't cause diplomatic problems. That night, Jake found Zara in her room, rocking back and forth in her corner. She had somehow heard about the Velthari demand. Empire wants Zara back, she said quietly. Now Jake in trouble. Told Jake this would happen. Shendal bring problems. Everywhere. You didn't bring problems, Jake said. They did by treating you like garbage. Shendal are garbage, Zara said automatically. Garbage belongs in waste places. Zara should go back. Stop causing trouble for good people. Jake sat down across from her. What do you want, Zara? Not what you think you should want, but what you actually want. Zara looked at him with wide eyes. Nobody had ever asked her what she wanted before. Shendal not allowed to want things. She whispered. I'm asking anyway, Jake said. What would make you happy? Zara thought for a long time. Jake could see her struggling with the concept of personal desires. Want to not be scared all the time, she said finally. Want to not hurt inside. Want to understand why Jake is kinda worthless thing. You're not worthless, Jake said for the 100th time. Then why Empire throw away? Zara asked. Why leave to die? If have worth, why nobody want? Jake realized she was asking the right questions now. She was starting to see the contradiction between what she had been taught and how she was being treated. Because they were wrong, Jake said simply. They made a mistake. The meeting with Administrator Ben Taylor the next day was tense. Taylor was a thin man with worried eyes who clearly did not want to deal with diplomatic problems. Mr. Morrison, Taylor said, I understand your intentions were good, that this situation has created complications for the entire colony. So we're just going to send her back to die? Jake asked. The Velthari say they'll place her in a proper facility for her caste, Taylor said. They claim she'd be cared for. Dr. Chun spoke up. I've examined Zara extensively. Returning her to the caste system would cause severe psychological trauma. It might kill her. And keeping her here might damage our relationship with a major trading partner, Taylor replied. I have to think about the good of the entire colony. Jake felt his anger building. What about the good of one innocent person? She's not our citizen, Taylor said. We don't have the right to keep her against her government's wishes. Her government abandoned her, Jake said. They gave up that right when they left her to die. The argument continued for an hour. Taylor was clearly sympathetic to Zara's situation, but he was also afraid of the political consequences of defying the Velthari Empire. Finally, Dr. Chun suggested a compromise. What if we let Zara decide for herself? If she chooses to return to Velthari space, we'll allow it. If she chooses to stay, we'll fight for her right to asylum. Taylor looked uncomfortable with this idea. Can she really make that choice? From what I understand, her people don't believe she has the right to make decisions. That's exactly why we need to let her try, Jake said. Give her the chance to be a person instead of property. That evening, Jake found Zara in her room. But something was wrong. She had torn strips from her blankets and was trying to tie them around her wrists. When she saw Jake, she tried to hide what she was doing. Zara, what are you doing? Jake asked, alarmed. Making ready for return, she sighed quietly. Shendel who leave proper place must be punished. Zara trying to punish self first. Show Empire that Zara sorry for causing trouble. Jake quickly moved to stop her. No, Zara, you don't need to hurt yourself. If Zara not punish self, Empire will do worse, she said. Maybe if Zara show sorry, they not punish Jake too. Jake realized that Zara was trying to protect him by hurting herself. She believed that if she showed enough suffering, the Velthari might forgive him for helping her. Zara, listen to me, Jake said, holding her hands gently. You have a choice. You don't have to go back if you don't want to. Zara stared at him. Shendel not have choices, only orders. Here you do, Jake said. Dr. Chun and I will fight for your right to choose. But you have to tell us what you want. Zara began to cry. Jake had never seen her cry before. She had been taught that even tears were a luxury she did not deserve. Want to stay, she whispered. Want to learn how to be person. Want to understand why Jake thinks Zara is worth saving. Jake felt relief wash over him. Then we'll make sure you can stay. But what if Empire hurts colony because of Zara, she asked. What if other humans suffer because Zara is selfish? Elena Vasquez arrived at New Portland Colony 3 days after the story broke across the human networks. She was an investigative journalist who specialized in stories about injustice, and Zara's case had caught her attention immediately. Jake was not happy to see reporters showing up. He wanted to protect Zara's privacy, but Elena convinced him that telling the story might help other people in similar situations. The galaxy needs to know what's happening, Elena said as she sat across from Jake in the colony's small cafe. The Velthari caste system isn't just their internal business when it leads to people being abandoned to die. Jake looked tired. He had been fighting the colonial administration for days, trying to prevent them from sending Zara back to Velthari space. The pressure was wearing on him. I just want her to be safe, Jake said. I don't want her to become some kind of political symbol. Sometimes people become symbols whether they want to or not, Elena said gently. But that doesn't mean their individual story isn't important. Elena interviewed Dr. Chun, Maya, and several colony officials. She also spoke with Zara, though that conversation was difficult. Zara still believed that talking about herself was inappropriate for someone of her caste. Shendel's story's not important, Zara told Elena through Dr. Chin's translation. Why human want to hear about worthless things? Because your story shows how strong you are, Elena explained. You survived 6 months alone on that station. That takes incredible strength. Zara looked confused. Surviving, not strength. Surviving is what vermin do. Real strength is accepting proper death when told. Elena felt sick hearing this, but she kept asking questions. She wanted people to understand exactly what the caste system did to individuals like Zara. When Elena's story was published across the human networks, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Humans from dozens of colonies were outraged by what they read. The idea that an intelligent being could be conditioned to believe they deserved to die was horrifying to most humans. Protests began on Earth within hours of the story's publication. Thousands of people gathered outside Velthari embassy buildings, demanding action. The protests spread to other human worlds quickly. Admiral Grace Miller, Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, received hundreds of thousands of messages from angry citizens. They demanded that humanity take a stand against the Velthari caste system. This is not who we are, read one typical message. We cannot stand by while sapient beings are treated as disposable garbage. The human government's response was swift. President Nathan Brooks gave a speech that was broadcast across known space. Humanity will not tolerate the systematic dehumanization of any sapient species, Brooks declared. The treatment of individuals like Zara violates every principle of dignity and worth that civilized species should uphold. The speech sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Most species preferred to avoid commenting on other cultures' internal practices. Humanity's direct challenge to the Velthari system was seen as aggressive and naive by some, inspiring by others. The Velthari Empire's response was confused and angry. They sent a delegation to New Portland Colony to retrieve Zara and to protest human interference in their internal affairs. Ambassador Kethver led the Velthari delegation. He was a tall, imposing figure with dark green scales and the bearing of someone used to being obeyed without question. When he met with Administrator Taylor, his message was clear. The human Morrison has stolen property belonging to the Velthari Empire, Kethver said in perfect galactic standard. This female is Shendel. She belongs in proper facilities with others of her kind. She's not property, Taylor said, though. His voice was less confident than his words. She's a person. Humans do not understand Velthari biology, Kethver replied smoothly. The Shendel are genetically inferior. They require special handling and cannot survive outside their designated environments. This female will die if not returned to proper care. Jake, who was also at the meeting, felt his anger flare. She was surviving fine until your people abandoned her to die. Kethver looked at Jake with disdain. The Morrison speaks of things beyond his understanding. The Empire made a calculated decision based on resource allocation. Individual Shendo are easily replaced. Easily replaced? Jake stood up, his fists clenched. She has a name. She has thoughts and feelings. She's not replaceable. Emotional thinking, Kethver said dismissively. This is why humans are not ready for true galactic responsibility. You cannot separate sentiment from logic. The meeting grew more tense when Kethver demanded to see Zara personally. He claimed he needed to verify her condition and caste status. I will examine the Shendel and determine proper course of action, he announced. Dr. Chen immediately objected. Zara is under medical care. Seeing representatives of the system that traumatized her could cause severe psychological damage. The Shendel has no medical rights, Kethver said matter-of-factly. Only maintenance requirements. I will see her now. Jake realized that Kethver truly did not see Zara as a person. To him, she was literally a piece of equipment that needed to be returned to its proper place. Despite Dr. Chun's protests, Administrator Taylor felt he had no choice but to allow the meeting. The diplomatic pressure was too great. However, he insisted that Dr. Chun and Jake be present, and that the meeting be brief. When Kethver entered Zara's room, her reaction was immediate and terrifying. She threw herself to the floor and began speaking rapidly in Velthari, her voice high with panic. "What is she saying?" Jake asked Dr. Chun. "She's begging forgiveness for polluting his site," Dr. Chun translated, her own voice shaking with anger. "She's asking to be killed quickly instead of slowly." Kethver looked down at Zara with satisfaction. "Good, the conditioning remains intact. She understands her place." He spoke to Zara in their own language, his voice harsh and commanding. Zara's response was immediate submission, but Jake could see terror in her eyes. "Stop," Jake said, stepping between Kethver and Zara. "You're scaring her." "The Shendel should be scared," Kethver replied. "Fear keeps them functional. This one has been contaminated by human softness, but proper reconditioning will restore her usefulness." "Reconditioning?" Dr. Chun asked. "Memory, adjustment, behavioral modification, pain conditioning," Kethver explained casually. "Standard procedures for Shendel who have been exposed to inappropriate influences." Jake felt something snap inside him. The casual way Kethver described torturing Zara back into submission was more than he could bear. "Get out," Jake said, his voice deadly quiet. "The Morrison has no authority here," Kethver said. "Get out." Jake shouted, moving toward the Velthari. "Ambassador." Security guards had to separate them. Kethver left the room with his dignity intact, but Jake could see that the confrontation had shaken him. He was not used to anyone challenging Velthari authority so directly. After Kethver left, Zara was in a terrible state. She had curled up in her corner and was hitting herself, repeating over and over that she was sorry for causing trouble. "Zara brought shame on Empire," she cried. "Zara caused humans to be angry, all Zara's fault. Should have died on station." Like good Shendel, it took Dr. Chun an hour to calm her down. Jake sat with her, feeling helpless and furious. "I won't let them take you," he promised. "Whatever it takes, I won't let them hurt you again." But even as he said it, Jake knew the situation was getting out of his control. The Velthari Empire was demanding Zara's return, and they had legal precedent on their side. The human colonial government was caught between their own principles and the need to maintain diplomatic relations. The crisis escalated the next day when Velthari ships arrived in the new Portland system. They claimed to be there for a routine diplomatic visit, but everyone knew they were there to retrieve Zara by force if necessary. Commander Joe Harris, head of the Colonial Defense Forces, called an emergency meeting. The room was packed with officials, military personnel, and civilian leaders. "We have 3 Velthari heavy cruisers in our system," Harris announced. "They're not making any threats, but the message is clear. They want their property back." "She's not property," said Maya Rodriguez firmly. "I agree with you," Harris replied. "But we have to be realistic about our situation. We have 1 defense frigate and a handful of patrol ships. If this turns into a shooting war, we lose." "Administrator." Taylor looked exhausted. "Maybe we should consider the compromise they offered. They said they would place her in a better facility with improved conditions." "A golden cage is still a cage," Dr. Chun said angrily. "And they defined improved conditions as regular meals and basic medical care. Things that should be basic rights, not privileges." Jake had been quiet during most of the meeting, but now he stood up. "What if we ask other human colonies for help?" "What do you mean?" Taylor asked. "If this is really about human principles," Jake said, "then it shouldn't just be New Portland's fight. This should be about what humanity stands for as a species." Commander Harris looked thoughtful. "The protests have spread to dozens of worlds. Public opinion is definitely on our side. Public opinion doesn't stop plasma cannons, Taylor said grimly, but Jake's idea had planted a seed. Within hours, messages were flowing between human colonies and Earth itself. The Galactic Council Chamber had never seen anything like it. Representatives from dozens of species sat in the massive circular hall, watching as humanity formally challenged the Velthari Empire's right to reclaim Zara. President Nathan Brooks stood at the speaking platform, his voice carrying across the chamber through universal translators. Behind him, holographic displays showed images of Zara when Jake first found her, alongside footage of the protests spreading across human space. "We are here today because one young female was deemed worthless by her society," Brooks said. "Abandoned. To die because moving her would cost too much money. But worth is not determined by economic calculations. Worth is inherent in the very fact of existence." The Velthari delegation sat stiffly in their section. Ambassador Kethver's expression showed barely controlled anger at having their internal policies questioned in such a public forum. "The human delegation misunderstands the nature of our species," Kethver responded when given the chance to speak. "The caste system maintains order and efficiency. Each individual serves according to their genetic capabilities. The Shendel are designed for specific functions. Removing them from their proper environment causes dysfunction." Council Elder Thizes, an ancient spider-like being who had seen thousands of diplomatic disputes, raised one of her many limbs. "The Velthari position is that this individual is property, correct? Specialized workforce," Kethver corrected, "with specific care requirements and behavioral conditioning." Brooks stepped forward again. "Elder Thizes, with your permission, we would like this individual to speak for herself." A murmur went through the chamber. In galactic diplomatic history, property had never been asked to testify about its own status. Kethver objected immediately. "The Shendel lacks the mental capacity for such proceedings. She has been contaminated by human influence and cannot provide reliable testimony." "Then let the council judge her capacity," Brooks replied calmly. Elder Thizes considered this. "The request is unusual, but not without precedent. If the individual can demonstrate sapience and understanding, her testimony will be heard." 3 days later, Zara found herself standing in a small chamber connected to the main council hall. Dr. Chun stood beside her, along with Jake and Maya. Through a transparent wall, she could see hundreds of alien beings waiting to hear her speak. Zara was terrified. She had made remarkable progress in the months since Jake found her, but speaking to the most powerful beings in the galaxy was beyond anything she had imagined. "I cannot do this," she whispered to Jake. "Shendel not allowed to. Speak to important people. Will bring shame to humans who helped." "You won't bring shame," Jake said gently. "You'll bring truth. Just tell them what happened to you. What if Zara says wrong thing? What if make everything worse?" Jake took her hands carefully. Over the months, Zara had slowly learned to accept gentle touch without flinching. "Zara, do you remember what I told you the first day I found you?" Zara thought back to that terrible time on the station. Jake said Zara was valuable because Zara was alive. "Do you believe that now?" Zara was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes. When Jake is kind, Zara feels like maybe is true. When Dr. Chun helps, Zara thinks maybe worth something small." "Then tell them that," Jake said. "Tell them what it feels like to go from believing you're worthless to believing you might matter." When Zara entered the council chamber, the silence was complete. She moved slowly to the speaking platform, her legs shaking with fear. She had grown healthier over the months, but she was still small and fragile-looking compared to most species in the chamber. Elder Thizes spoke first, her voice gentle despite her intimidating appearance. "What is your name, young one?" "Zara," she said quietly, then caught herself. "But Shendel not supposed to have names, only numbers." Zara was number 4847. Do you prefer to be called Zara or 4847? Zara looked confused by the question. Zara likes name Zara. Jake gave it meaning. But not sure if allowed to like things. A ripple of reaction went through the chamber. The simple honesty of her confusion was more powerful than any diplomatic speech. Tell us about your life before you met Jake Morrison, Eldrithises said. Zara began to speak, her voice growing steadier as she continued. She described the conditioning from birth, the constant reminders of her worthlessness, the dangerous work that Shendel were forced to do. She talked about watching others die and being told it was natural and proper. Empire taught Zara that pain was good teacher, she said, that suffering kept Shendel in proper place. Zara believed this true until Jake showed different way. What? Did Jake Morrison show you? Asked Council Member Vort, a tall being covered in crystalline formations. Jake showed that kindness not weakness, that helping others not waste of resources. Jake treated Zara like person, even when Zara not know how to be person. Ambassador Kethver could no longer remain silent. The human contaminated her natural conditioning. She no longer understands her proper place in society. Zara turned to look at Kethver directly for the first time. Months ago, seeing him had sent her into panic. Now, she felt sad instead of terrified. Ambassador Kethver, she sighed, using his title carefully. Zara understands place now. Place is not in waste levels being forgotten. Place is helping others learn they have worth too. You are Shendel, Kethver said firmly. Your genetics determine your function. You cannot change what you are. Zara still same genetics, she replied calmly. But genetics not determine worth. Genetics not determine if deserve kindness or death. Jake taught Zara that worth comes from being alive, from caring about others, from choosing to help instead of harm. Eldrithises leaned forward with interest. You speak of choice. Do you believe you have the right to choose your own path? This was the hardest question for Zara. She had been taught from birth that choice was not for her kind. Before Jake, Zara never think about choice, only about obeying, but now ... She paused, gathering courage. Now Zara choose to help other people who feel worthless. Choose to learn new things. Choose to believe that maybe Zara precious to someone. The word precious sent another ripple through the chamber. It was not a word anyone expected to hear. From someone who had been raised to believe she was garbage. Who told you that you were precious? Eldrithises asked gently. Zara looked back at Jake, who was watching from the observation area. Jake not say exact words. But Jake act like Zara. Precious, spend time helping. Risk trouble for Zara's safety. Treat Zara like she matter. Make Zara feel precious even when not understand why. Council Member Vort spoke again. If you could choose your future, what would you choose? Zara want to help others like Jake helped Zara, she said without hesitation. Want to show people who feel worthless that they not alone. Want to learn how to give same kindness that saved Zara's life. And if the Velthari Empire orders you to return to your previous life. Zara was quiet for a long moment. This was the question that terrified her most. If must return, Zara will remember that was precious to someone, even for a little while. Will remember that kindness possible. But Zara hope not have to return. Hope can stay and become person. Jake believes Zara can be. When Zara finished speaking, the chamber was silent for several minutes. Even species that had no emotions showed signs of being moved by her testimony. Eldrithises called for a recess while the council debated. In their private chambers, the discussion was intense. The individual demonstrates clear sapience and emotional capacity, noted Council Member Drex, whose species valued logic above all else. Her testimony shows cognitive development and moral reasoning. But she is property of the Velthari Empire under established law. argued Representative Kulth. We cannot simply ignore legal precedent. Can we ignore fundamental rights? Countered Elder Thyses. If a being can think, feel, choose, and grow, how can we call them property? The debate continued for hours. Finally, Elder Thyses called for a vote. When the council reconvened, Zara stood with Jake, Dr. Chun, and Maya in the observation area. President Brooks waited at the speaking platform for the decision. The Galactic Council has reached a decision, Elder Thyses announced. By a vote of 27 to 12 with 3 abstentions, the Council rules that sapient beings demonstrating cognitive capacity, emotional development, and moral reasoning cannot be classified as property, regardless of genetic engineering or social conditioning. The chamber erupted in noise. The Velthari delegation sat in stunned silence while human representatives cheered. Furthermore, Elder Thyses continued, the Council recognizes the right of such individuals to choose their own path, including the right to seek asylum from systems that would deny their personhood. Ambassador Keffer stood up angrily. This decision sets a dangerous precedent. Other species will use this ruling to interfere in our internal affairs. If your internal affairs involve denying personhood to sapient beings, Elder Thyses replied calmly, then perhaps they should be interfered with. 6 months later, Zara stood in the lobby of the Dignity Foundation, an organization Jake had started to help survivors of oppressive systems across the galaxy. She wore simple clothes she had chosen herself, and her posture showed confidence. That would have been impossible when Jake first found her. A young Kefrian refugee had just arrived, brought by a trader who found him abandoned on a mining station.